Hi, this is Chris with firstcenturychristianity.net. Today I'm talking to you about the folly of trying to restore the original language ourselves. Starting on Genesis 11:1 today, it says the whole earth used the same language and the same words. That references the graphic on the screen about the ziggurat there, where the people of Babylon tried to build a structure that could defeat Yahweh, that could thwart his will and say, okay, he's never going to be able to flood us off the earth and kill us again. It was awful that they even thought that way. They were denying the covenant of the rainbow, and they were trying to thwart Yahweh's will and kicking against his will, which is something we should really avoid doing. And in this case, trying to restore the language or trying to get to that Genesis 11:1 pure language before the time of Zephaniah 3:9 is kind of a similar instance there. It's a little bit dangerous ground to tread. And I don't mean that we shouldn't study the ancient languages, but today I'm going to put into perspective where we are with our language today, and that the fact that where we're trying to go is pretty much impossible until Yahweh decides that it's time. Zephaniah 3:9 says, "For then I will give to the peoples purified lips, that all of them may call on the name of Yahweh to serve him shoulder to shoulder." It's talking about a future time when the language is going to be restored to that, maybe to what was happening before Genesis 11, before the Tower of Babel, or maybe we're getting something that has never been heard before. We're all going to have one unified, pure language. So we know when mankind tries to do something that Yahweh doesn't want done is something that's bad. Isaiah 9:8 through 11 talks about when Ephraim and the Samarians say in their heart that they are going to build Israel back on their own, and they're going to do it better. They're going to use smooth stones. They're going to build the cedar tree. It's going to be 10 times better than it was before. And they're saying that they're going to do it before Yahweh wants it done, because of the pride in their heart. And this is something that we have to take a lot of care in our studies. Are we studying to get closer to Yahweh, to get closer to Yeshua, to get closer to the faith once delivered? Or do we make that unintentional psychological leap into trying to get to that special information, that special language, that special pronunciation that only we know, that special things that puff people up and tend to lead us toward pride, and pride comes before destruction. It's my contention that trying to get to this, restore these languages today, is very similar. I say, we're going to do it on our own. We're going to hasten the day. We're going to do that. And I don't even think it is the goal, because if we look at how language changed in the Bible throughout biblical times, if you didn't know, sometimes we read these things into our studies, but Hebrew didn't stay the same. In Genesis 11:1, Tower of Babel, Yahweh scattered us all over the planet, scattered our languages, and he intends it to stay that way. So that cascades into the Bible. Moses came after Genesis 11, so he received information from Yahweh in a way that he could understand it and represent it to the people. And that was probably an Egyptian form of Semitic language that probably wasn't the pure language of Genesis 11. We'd like to think it was. But even if it was, it doesn't stay static, because as they move across the desert, as they move into Canaan, they learn things. The language just simply doesn't stay static. And if you didn't know, the Bible was actually written in 3 languages. It was written in Hebrew, primarily, the Old Testament, Hebrew, and then Syriac for some of the letters that were written during the captivity and when the time came back, and some are mixed. And then in the New Testament, it's in Greek. I know people are going to tear their clothes, but Chris, no. New Testament was written in Hebrew. Well, if it was, we don't have it. And if it was translated into Greek pretty quickly so the rest of the world could understand it. The world spoke Greek, and the Septuagint was the Greek Old Testament was the Bible of the synagogue back then. We also can't ignore the miracle of Acts 2, where the people who were present heard the truth in their own languages. They heard Peter and John and the gang. Once those guys got the Holy Spirit and they were preaching the word of God, the miracle wasn't that everybody was able to understand this special, mysterious language that nobody recorded. The miracle was that they were able to understand in their own languages. One of the lessons of that is to realize that Yahweh knows who we are, where we are, our life experiences, and how we each can receive information. It's a trust factor there. There's a faith factor going on there that he's going to communicate to us in a way that makes sense. Now, in science, there's a word called entropy, which is used to mean that disorder increases. So if you imagine I'm holding a pile of marbles that look like a ziggurat, that they're a layer of blue marbles and a layer of white, and then a layer of red, and then a layer of white, and then a layer of yellow, and a layer of white, and a layer of green, and they come in an inverted cone, and they're perfectly stacked. That didn't happen by accident. They would have been put together on purpose in that shape. If you drop that on the floor, they're going to scatter, and the colors are going to mix. And the further the marbles get away from the impact point, the more disorganized that they will be. This is like a scientific fact. So we realize where we are in life today, so far away from even the first century, which was mixed up. The first century Judea had all sorts of languages present. It had primarily Hebrew, it had Greek, had some Latin speakers, had some Aramaic holder-honors, and in Acts 2, it says that people came from all over the world. So it's kind of a metropolis, kind of like our New York City or our London today. It was where people came from all over the world and had different languages. Again, the miracle of Acts 2, that the called out ones, the special people that were supposed to be there for that special event, were able to hear the word of God in their native tongues. Now, I knew that our language, English, was messed up and a mutt. I've known this, my whole life, particularly when I learned Spanish in high school, Castellano. To contrast English to Spanish is pretty hard to do, because English is a Wild West language. It's a mutt. It's mixed up, and it doesn't generally have rules for pronunciation. And the verb, noun, article associations, rules that exist in almost every other language aren't present in English. So it makes it very difficult for us to learn other languages. It makes it very difficult for people who come from these orderly type languages to learn English. It makes it difficult for them as well. But recently I've been watching videos from a YouTube channel named Rob Words, a British guy in the UK, who has done enormous work on the etymology of words and sounds, and has illustrated the absolute folly that is the English language. And I don't know if you guys know this. As I've been telling people, a lot of people did, except for me, but the letters that we're looking at right now on the screen that I would call English, that you would call English, are actually Latin. The English alphabet is a Germanic alphabet made up of runes, R-U-N-E-S. We speak a language that was originally presented to the world with a completely different alphabet. We're such a mutt that we have Latin letters representing our English language. Of course, this has to do with all of the slaying and invading and killing and mixing of Europe in the Middle Ages, and it has to do with the Bible and Catholicism and how this mix-up came to be. But we're 600, 700, 800 years removed from that, and we're much more of a mess we are today than we were at that point in time. Punctuation, for instance, didn't exist in English, and I guess Latin, and it was started to be introduced. Now, when I say punctuation was introduced, if you watch this Rob Words channel, or maybe you know better places to look, punctuation came over time. And even the words, the periods and the decimals and such, even the etymology of those words is actually eye-opening. So this is kind of fun, but it also serves to show that we are in a perpetual state of confusion today. That the language that we have would make it incredibly difficult for us to equate our thoughts and our concepts with that Genesis 11:1 unified, perfect, original language. We wouldn't be able to understand it. And there are people out there, scholars, who have traced words and concepts all the way back to Semitic Canaanite language that we use in common parlance today. And others have their origin in Greek, others have their origin in yesterday. I mean, some of the languages we use in parlance today, SpaceX, you use SpaceX. What does that mean, right? What does space mean? The word space used to just mean an area, and it came to mean the actual vast expanse of the solar system. And now if you add an X on the end of it, it means a company that launches rockets and retrieves them. So our language is constantly in flux, and that's fine. And that's just the way we are today. So I'll put a link to Rob Ward's video about the runes. I think it's the one about the runes I'm going to put in the comments wherever this is posted. And I hope you take some time to watch it, because he's seems to be a pretty nice guy. And I usually hesitate to reference off to other places, because in the past I've done that and then have had people kind of go off the rails and have to claw it back because that's just the way the movement is, I suppose. But I've watched a number of the Rob Words videos, and they're very lighthearted and kind of fun and anecdotal, so that you can enjoy it as entertainment, if nothing else, rather than the debauchery we see in social media and on television. The other illustration of this folly of trying to restore language is something that a few people know, probably millions, is that when Judah was restored, the nation we call Israel today would have been more aptly called Judah. But when everybody came home in 1948, we had recording devices. It was modern, ways of recording stuff. And so when they came home, the Jews that had preserved Hebrew all over the known world came home, and they spoke it differently, and they wrote it differently, and they had different grammar. And guess what? They not only did they not fight over the grammar like us fools here in the United States learning Hebrew concepts in 2025 and arguing about the pronunciation of words that we don't completely understand. Not only did they not get brawl and they didn't fight, they recorded it for posterity, and they recorded it for scholars to be able to discern the information that was coming in from all over the world. And they were kind of happy that everybody was coming home. Lesson learned. Hebrew did not remain static in the diaspora. We have this concept in our head that the rabbis were just going to be like robots, and they were going to pass this language down behind closed doors, and it was going to come out the end of the diaspora the same way that it went in. It just isn't true. And it's not even like a goal. It's not even like a point of it, because you get to a point with the language where you start thinking that is some kind of incantation or some kind of magic to it, that if you pronounce it properly, that all of a sudden the chariot of fire is going to come and take you away. When the meaning is that in order to understand Yahweh, is that we're supposed to understand his character, his love and his mercy and his justice and his Torah and his son, and understanding them through their deeds and through their actions and through their example, not through incantations. So I'm going to put a link to the video of the different ways Hebrew was spoken, also in the comments of this, so that you can enjoy that and appreciate the challenge that they had to put everything back together again. This video was sent to me by one of the members of our congregation about 2 years ago, and I hearken back to it all the time. So I thought it was time to actually share it with everybody. I hope you find time to watch the videos that I'm linking. And a couple of the takeaways from today's message is that we really need to be self-aware of our present state. And when it comes to language, that the language that we grew up with, that we understand and we think is so clear, is simply not. And it sets a foundation to where we have a humongous divide between us and the pure original language or even the ancient languages and dialects that we seek to understand. And the other is that the expectation that we get of the pronunciations being perfect today is simply not real. It's simply not a reality. Now, we don't want to be making up our own or being flippant with it. We do want to keep trying to get it as right as we can, understanding that there are limits to our ability to know stuff. You know, we have a tendency to try to get things perfect, but to eschew or to shun people from academia because of our experiences with mainstream Christianity, with the fact that there are so many people who are standing in lecterns on Sunday, on the wrong day of the week, preaching that it's okay to eat pork and that the Sabbath was done away with and that Christmas is an okay thing, when they went to school and learned the truth. And they learned the origin of these false doctrines, and they don't teach the truth. So we tend to be jaded when it comes to academics and to learning from people who have actual credentials and actual, pedigree. And we kind of have to get over that, because there's a world of information out there from this Rob Words fellow, the information he's putting about the etymology of all of the words and languages that have ever existed. I don't know how a human being ever got into studying this, but it's cool that he did. On through the rabbis, the Jews, who have been tasked with protecting the Torah for the last 2,000 years. They took that seriously. And yeah, they're going to have different doctrines if they haven't accepted the Messiah, but they're also going to have a lot of good. And we're going to have a lot to learn from the academics and pure academics, and they do exist. We just have to be on our guard not to let strange doctrines get into our brain or follow bunny trails that we shouldn't. But good and edifying information is out there, even if it takes a bit of work to find it. I hope you have a blessed week as we begin or continue our preparations for Passover here in 2025, as we're going to clean out the leaven and prepare our hearts and our minds to commemorate the death and resurrection of the Messiah in the way the first century church did. If you're interested in doing that with us, please, come to the website or give a contact, and you could join us for our Passover observances here in Kansas City if you like. And I hope you have a good week, and may Yahweh bless you and keep you in the name of his son, Yeshua.